In the morning, the gentle current would be taken to a repair facility. The survivors would return to 6 weeks after the rescue. Nimra stood before the Quillari High Council in the great chamber on her homeworld. The room was ancient, with walls of living coral that glowed softly in the filtered light. 50 council members sat in a semicircle, their faces showing various degrees of concern, curiosity, and fear. First Officer Nimra, said the head counselor, an elderly female named Korsha, you have submitted a request for the Quillari government to establish a formal defense cooperation agreement with the human government. This is highly unusual. Explain your reasoning. Nimra had prepared for this moment, but her hand still trembled slightly. Honored counselors, I have seen what exists beyond our protected worlds. I have witnessed violence that would have destroyed us if help had not come. And I have learned that our centuries of peace have made us vulnerable. We have the Galactic Cooperative to protect us, one counselor argued. That is the purpose of membership. The cooperative took 3 weeks to respond to our distress call. The humans took 4 hours. If we had waited for official channels, everyone aboard the gentle current would be dead or enslaved. Another counselor leaned forward. But at what cost? These humans you praise are warriors, killers. They represent everything we have evolved beyond. Nimra felt anger flare in her chest. They are protectors. Yes, they can kill. Yes, they are warriors. But they are also the only reason I'm standing here to have this conversation. They risked their lives for strangers, asked for nothing in return, and treated us with gentleness even while fighting to save us. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some supported Nimra's proposal. Others insisted that getting closer to humanity would corrupt Quillari culture. Korsha finally called for silence. This matter requires more discussion. Nimra, you will remain available for further questioning. Council is adjourned. As Nimra left the chamber, she felt defeated. She had hoped to make them understand, but they were too comfortable in their illusions of safety. Across the galaxy, in a Vrakan prison facility on a remote asteroid, the captured raiders from the gentle current attack were being held. Word of what happened had spread through the Vrakan syndicate like fire through dry grass. Griktar sat in his cell, staring at the wall. Other prisoners gave him a wide berth. He was the captain who had failed, who had lost an easy prize, who had been defeated by a force 1/10 his size. But more than that, he was the one who had fought humans and lived to tell about it. A young Vrakan prisoner, new to the facility, approached him cautiously. Is it true? About the Deathworlders? Griktar didn't look at him. Yes. They say you had over 100 raiders and lost to 20 humans. We had 127. They had 24. Griktar finally turned to look at the young prisoner, and it wasn't even close. They went through us like we were children. But Vrakan are the strongest warriors in this sector. Griktar laughed bitterly. We thought so too. Until we met a species that evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them. They're faster than us. Stronger than us. They take damage that should kill them and keep fighting. And worse, they're smart. They don't just fight with strength. They fight with strategy, with technology, with a kind of controlled violence that is far more terrifying than rage. The young prisoner sat down, his confidence shaken. So what do we do? We avoid them. The syndicate has already issued orders. Any ship that shows human signatures is off limits. We don't take human cargo. We don't attack human vessels. We don't even go near human space, and we're afraid of them? Yes, and we're smart enough to admit it. In a military command center on Earth, specifically in Seoul, Admiral Gina reviewed the latest reports with her staff. The gentle current incident had been labeled a success by human standards, but it had created political complications. The cooperative is officially filing a complaint about our aggressive intervention, reported her aide, a young officer named Kyung. Gina snorted. Of course they are. How many complaints do we have now? 14 in the last year. All for similar reasons. We respond too fast, use too much force, don't follow proper protocols. And how many lives have we saved in that same year? Kyung smiled. Over 3,000 documented cases, ma'am. Then they can file all the complaints they want. Gina pulled up a galactic map showing recent pirate activity. What concerns me more is this pattern. Attacks are increasing in frequency and coordination. The gentle current wasn't random. Someone is testing the cooperative's defenses. Do we know who? Not yet. But whoever it is, They're going to learn what happens when you threaten civilians in this galaxy. Gina turned to her staff. Increase patrols in the frontier sectors. I want our ships where they can respond quickly to distress calls. And get me a meeting with cooperative intelligence. Whether they like our methods or not, we need to share information. At a human colony on the edge of civilized space, Jiwoo stood in front of a class of young medical students. They came from 6 different species, all of them eager to learn from the human who had saved so many lives. Trauma medicine is about priorities, Jiwoo explained, displaying diagrams on the screen behind her. You can't save everyone, so you need to know who to treat first. But here's the challenge. Every species has different physiology. What's critical for a Quillari might be minor for a Surexi. A Quillari student raised his hand. Dr. Jiwoo, is it true that humans can survive injuries that would kill most species? Sometimes, yes. Our bodies are built to handle damage. We have redundant systems, fast healing, and a high pain tolerance. But that doesn't mean we're invincible. It just means we're hard to kill. Another student, this one from a species with delicate bird-like features, asked nervously, Are you frightened when you go into dangerous situations? Jiwoo thought about this carefully. Yes, always. Fear is healthy. It keeps you alert. The trick is not letting fear paralyze you. When people need help, you push through the fear and do what needs to be done. After class, the Quillari student approached her privately. Dr. Jiwoo, I need to ask you something personal. After what happened on the Gentle Current, weren't you angry? Didn't you want revenge on the raiders? Of course I was angry. But anger doesn't help patients, and revenge doesn't bring back the dead. Jiwoo looked at the young student seriously. I became a medic because I wanted to save lives, not take them. Yes, I'm trained to fight if I have to. All humans are. But that's not who I choose to be. Meanwhile, Doan had returned to his job as an engineer, but things had changed. Word had spread that the quiet human on the Gentle Current was actually a retired Marine who had fought off raiders to protect civilians. Now everywhere the ship docked, crews asked for him by name. They felt safer with a human aboard. He tried to maintain his low profile, but it was difficult. One day, while doing repairs in the engine room, he found the new captain, a Quillari male named Genko, watching him work. Is there a problem, Captain? Doan asked. No problem. I just wanted to thank you. Again, for what you did. I was just protecting people. Anyone would have done the same. No, they wouldn't have. Most species would have surrendered immediately. Only humans seem to have this instinct to fight when others are in danger. Genko paused. I've been offered a promotion. A better ship, better pay. But I turned it down. Why? Because this ship has you. And as long as you're here, I know my crew is safe. That matters more than credits. Doan didn't know how to respond to that. He had wanted a quiet life, but apparently his reputation wouldn't allow it. On the retribution, Minho received a message from Vinza, the Quillari girl he had befriended. It was a video recording showing her standing in what looked like a training facility. Hi, Minho, she said cheerfully. I wanted to show you something. After what happened, I decided I didn't want to be helpless anymore. So I joined a self-defense class. Look, the video showed her practicing basic defensive moves with an instructor. Her form was terrible and she was clearly struggling with the physical demands, but she was trying, and she was smiling. I know I'll never be strong like humans, Vinza continued, but maybe I can be brave like them. Thank you for teaching me that being scared and being brave can happen at the same time. I hope I see you again someday. Minho watched the video 3 times, feeling emotions he couldn't quite name. Pride, certainly, but also sadness because this child had to learn about danger far too young, and hope because she hadn't let fear break her. He showed the video to Hagen. Sir, I think we're changing them. The Quillari, I mean. They're starting to think differently about self-defense. Hagen nodded slowly. I know. The question is whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Is it bad to want to protect yourself? No, but we need to be careful. We don't want to turn peaceful species into warriors. We want to help them find balance, to be able to defend themselves without losing what makes them who they are. Before Minho could respond, alarms sounded throughout the ship. The bridge called all senior staff to report immediately. When they arrived, Lieutenant Sora was already pulling up a star chart. We've got a priority distress call. Not a ship this time. A colony world. Which one? Hagen asked. Velhara, Quillari settlement. Population 4.3 million. Sora's face was grim. Sir, 3 days after the rescue, the gentle current limped into port at Station 14, escorted by the Retribution and a fleet of galactic cooperative vessels that had finally arrived. The station was a massive structure, home to millions of beings from dozens of species. News of the rescue had spread fast, and crowds gathered at the docking ports to see the survivors and their rescuers. Nimra stood at the main airlock, preparing to disembark with the other Quillari survivors. She had barely slept since the attack. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the battle again, saw the humans moving through the ship like living weapons, saw the impossible things they could do. Jiwoo appeared beside her carrying a medical kit. The human had not stopped working since the rescue. She had treated every injury, checked every passenger, and spent hours just talking to traumatized children. "How are you feeling?" Jiwoo asked gently. "I don't know," Nimra admitted. "Grateful, confused, scared." "Scared of what?" "Of your people. Of what they can do. Of what they are." Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. "Yeah, I get that a lot. We're scary." "I know we are. But Nimra, I need you to understand something. Every human on that ship chose to be there. Chose to risk their lives for people they'd never met. That's who we really are. But the violence, the way you fight, is necessary sometimes, but it's not who we are. It's just something we can do when we have to." Jiwoo squeezed Nimra's shoulder. "You'll figure it out. Just give it time." On the station, Hagen was having a much less pleasant conversation. He sat in a conference room across from 3 galactic cooperative officials, including a Sorexi named Thilvan, who seemed more interested in paperwork than people. "Your actions, while ultimately successful, were highly aggressive," Thilvan said, reading from a datapad. "You breached a civilian vessel with military force. You engaged in combat resulting in multiple deaths. You did not wait for proper cooperative authorization." Hagen kept his expression neutral. "The distress call indicated civilians under immediate threat. We responded according to human military protocols for hostage rescue situations. Human protocols are not cooperative protocols. Cooperative protocols would have taken 3 weeks. By then, those civilians would have been sold into slavery or killed." Thilvan made a note on his pad. "Nevertheless, there will be an investigation. The cooperative cannot simply allow military forces to act unilaterally, even in rescue situations." One of the other officials, a Quillari elder named Torvan, interrupted. "With respect, Thilvan, those military forces saved over 800 of my people. While the humans' methods were certainly dramatic, the results speak for themselves. Results are not the only consideration. We must think about precedent. If we allow humans to use military force whenever they feel it's justified, where does that lead?" Hagen leaned forward. "It leads to fewer dead civilians. You can file whatever reports you like, but the next time someone sends a distress call and humans answer, we will respond the same way. We will always prioritize civilian lives over your protocols." Thilvan's expression hardened. "Commander, you need to understand that the Galactic Cooperative values peace above all else. Your species' tendency toward violence, however well-intentioned, is concerning to many member worlds. And your tendency toward endless debate while people die is concerning to mine." The meeting ended shortly after, with nothing really resolved. Hagen left feeling frustrated, though not surprised. The cooperative had been at peace for so long that they had forgotten what threats looked like until they were already happening. Down in the station's medical center, Doan sat still while a Quillari doctor examined his shoulder. The wound was healing well, much faster than the doctor expected. "Remarkable," the doctor murmured. "I've never seen tissue regeneration at this rate." "Is this normal for humans?" "Pretty normal, yeah. We heal fast. And the pain? This type of injury should be extremely painful." "It hurts," Doan admitted, "but I've had worse." The doctor made notes, fascinated despite himself. "Would you be willing to allow me to study your physiology further? For medical research purposes. I suspect human biology could teach us a great deal." Dowan considered it. "Maybe later. Right now I just want to get the ship fixed and back to work." "Back to work? You were shot 3 days ago, and it's healing fine. No reason to sit around doing nothing." The doctor stared at him. "You Deathworlders are insane," Dowan smiled. "Yeah, we get that a lot." In a different part of the station, Minho sat in a small cafe with several of the Quillari children he had befriended. Their parents watched nervously from nearby tables, still unsure about letting their children near the human warrior. But the kids had insisted, and Minho had promised to teach them a card game from Earth. So the goal is to get rid of all your cards first, Minho explained, dealing out hands. But you have to match either the number or the color of the card on top of the pile. A young Kilari female named Vinza picked up her cards carefully. This seems complicated. You'll get it. It's actually pretty simple once you play a few rounds. They played, and the children laughed when they started to understand the strategy.
Minho was patient, helping them when they got confused, celebrating when they made good plays.
He looked nothing like the warrior who had fought through the ship 3 days ago. He looked like someone's fun uncle. Vinza's mother approached cautiously.
Corporal Minho,
"May I speak with you?" "Of course." Minho stood up, towering over the small Quilari. He saw her flinch slightly and sat back down quickly. "Sorry, I know I'm big. It's all right. I just wanted to thank you. For saving my daughter. For saving all of us. Just doing my job, ma'am. No, it was more than that. You didn't have to be kind to them. To treat them gently. But you did. My daughter has nightmares about the raiders, but when she thinks of you and your people, she feels safe." Minho didn't know what to say to that. "We're not heroes. We're just people who couldn't walk away when others needed help. That is exactly what makes you heroes." After she left, Vinza looked at Minho seriously. "Are you always a warrior? Or are you sometimes just Minho?" "I'm always just Minho," he said. "Being a warrior is just one part of what I am. Like how you're a student and a daughter and a friend all at the same time. But you're so good at fighting. You must have trained your whole life." "I've trained a lot, yeah. But I also trained to do other things. I can cook pretty well. I'm learning to play guitar. I like reading history books," he smiled. "Just because I can fight doesn't mean that's all I am." The children thought about this, their young minds working to understand something their culture had never taught them. That strength and gentleness could exist in the same person. That evening, Nimra attended a meeting of Quilari survivors. They had gathered to discuss what to do next, how to process their trauma, and what they should tell their families about what happened. Many spoke about the horror of the attack, about watching Captain Velthar die, about the fear of being captured, about thinking they would never see their homes again. Then they spoke about the rescue, and the mood in the room changed. "They moved so fast," said one crew member. "I've never seen anything move that fast." The Vraken shot them, multiple times, and they just kept coming. But they were gentle with us. Even in the middle of fighting, they were careful not to hurt us. An elderly passenger stood up. "I have lived for 93 years. I was taught that violence was a thing of the past, that civilized species had evolved beyond it. I believed that because I had never needed to believe anything else. Now I know the truth. Peace only exists because somewhere, someone is willing to fight to protect it." The room was silent. It was a difficult truth for a species that had built its entire culture on pacifism. Nimra stood. "I've been thinking about this for 3 days. And I believe we need to change. Not become warriors ourselves, but understand that the galaxy is more dangerous than we thought. We need to work more closely with humans. Learn from them. Maybe even learn to defend ourselves." "You want us to become violent?" someone asked, horrified. "No, I want us to become capable. There's a difference." Nimra looked around the room. The humans didn't enjoy fighting. They did it because they had to. Because we couldn't defend ourselves. I don't ever want to be that helpless again. The discussion continued for hours. Some agreed with Nimra. Others insisted that violence was never the answer. But everyone agreed on one thing. The galaxy had changed for them. They could never go back to thinking it was completely safe. Late that night, Heijin found Jiwoo sitting alone in an observation deck, looking out at the stars. He sat down beside her. "How are the passengers doing?" he asked. "Better. Physically, they're mostly fine. Emotionally, it'll take time. They're not used to trauma like this. And you? How are you doing?" Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. "I keep thinking about the ones we didn't save. The ones who died before we got there. That's not on you. You can't save everyone, I know. Doesn't make it easier." She looked at him. "Do you ever get used to it? To people dying? No, and I hope I never do. The day I get used to it is the day I stop being human." They sat in comfortable silence, two humans far from home, carrying the weight of being what the galaxy needed them to be, strong when others were weak, violent when others couldn't be, and somehow still kind when it mattered most. He looked at Dawon, who despite being shot was now helping Jiwoo check on wounded Quilari. He looked at the countdown timer. The battle was over. But Nimra's mind couldn't accept what she had witnessed. She sat on the floor of the bridge, surrounded by other Kilari crew members trying to process the impossible. The humans had taken back the entire ship in less than 20 minutes. 20 minutes, against over 100 Vrakan raiders who were supposed to be elite warriors. Around her, human marines moved through the ship with calm efficiency. They weren't celebrating or boasting. They were checking on civilians, providing medical aid, and securing prisoners. One marine, a female named Yuri, knelt beside a group of Kilari children who were crying in fear. "Hey, it's okay now," Yuri said softly, removing her helmet so they could see her face. She looked young, barely older than the teenagers among the prisoners. "You're safe. I know we look scary, but we're the good guys, I promise." One of the children, a small male barely old enough to speak, reached out and touched Yuri's armor with a webbed hand. "Are you a warrior?" Yuri smiled, kind of. "But right now I'm just someone making sure you get home safe." In another section of the ship, Minho was having a different kind of conversation. A Vrakan raider, one of the few still conscious after the assault, sat against a wall with his hands secured behind his back. He stared at Minho with something between fear and confusion. "What are you?" the Vrakan asked in broken trade language. Minho was checking the raider's injuries, making sure nothing was life-threatening. "I'm a Marine corporal from Earth. No, I mean, what are you? I shot you twice, center mass. You should be dead." Minho looked down at his armor, where 2 scorch marks marred the surface. "Oh, these? Yeah, that stung a little. Good armor, though. Earth manufacturers don't mess around." "A little? Those were plasma bolts. They can burn through ship hulls." "Yeah, well..." Minho stood up, satisfied the raider wasn't going to die. "Different ships, different hulls. You'll live. Medics will be by to treat you properly soon." The Vrakan watched him walk away, still trying to understand how any living thing could take weapons fire and just call it a sting. Down in the cargo hold where the majority of the Kilari prisoners had been kept, Jiwoo had set up a makeshift medical station. She moved from patient to patient with practiced ease, treating cuts, calming panic attacks, and checking for serious injuries. Her own people had already treated Doan's shoulder wound, but she had refused to rest until every Kilari was checked. An elderly Kilari female clutched Jiwoo's hand as the human medic examined a nasty bruise on her arm. "Thank you," the Kilari whispered. "Thank you for coming." "Of course," Jiwoo said gently. "We got the distress call. We came as fast as we could. But how did you do it?" "There were so many of them." Jiwoo paused, trying to think of how to explain. "My people are good at fighting. Really good. But we don't like doing it. We only fight when we have to protect others." The elderly Quillari looked at her with wide eyes. "Your people scare me, but I'm glad you're here." Jiwoo smiled sadly. She had heard that before many times. Humans had that effect on most species in the Galactic Cooperative. On the bridge, Heijin was having a similar conversation with Nimra. The Kilari first officer had pulled herself together enough to give a formal report, but her hands were still shaking as she spoke. "I sent the distress call on emergency frequency 7, she said. "I didn't think anyone would receive it in time. The Ruckin jammed most of our communications. We were close," Heijin explained. "Only 2 jumps away. We picked up your signal and came immediately." Nimra looked at him carefully. He didn't look like a monster. He was actually quite normal looking, with a calm face and careful movements. But she had seen what he could do. She had watched him fight 3 Vrakan raiders at once and win without breaking a sweat. "Commander, I need to ask you something. The raiders said you were from a death world. What does that mean?" Heijin was quiet for a moment. "You don't know about Earth? I know it exists. I know humans are relatively new to the Galactic Cooperative. But no one talks about your world much. We're told it's in a restricted sector. It's not restricted. We just don't advertise it." Heijin pulled up a data file on a nearby console. "This is Earth, my home." Nimra looked at the planet on the screen. It was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents. It looked peaceful. "I don't understand. It looks like a nice world. Let me show you the environmental data." Heijin brought up a comparison chart. Next to Earth's data, he put the information for the Quillari homeworld. Nimra read the numbers and felt her stomach drop. Earth's gravity was more than twice what her people lived with. The atmospheric pressure would crush her lungs. The oxygen concentration was so high it would be toxic to breathe. The temperature swings between day and night would kill her. This can't be right, she whispered. Nothing could evolve in these conditions. We did. And we're not even the toughest life forms on our world. Before we developed technology, we were prey animals. We had to become very good at surviving just to make it to the next day. Prey? But you're apex predators. I've seen what you can do. Hagen shook his head. We were prey for millions of years. Our ancestors were hunted by things bigger and stronger than we were. So we learned to run long distances, to track, to hunt in groups, to use tools. We learned to be persistence hunters. We would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We learned to throw things accurately enough to kill from a distance. We learned to cooperate in ways that let us take down animals 10 times our size. Nimrod tried to imagine it, a world so hostile that intelligence itself was a survival adaptation. And this made you into warriors? No, this made us into survivors. Warriors came later when we started fighting each other. Hagen's expression darkened. We've had thousands of wars, millions of deaths. We've done terrible things to our own species, but we learned from it. We learned that violence should be a last resort, not a first choice. Across the ship, Doan was having a similar conversation with a group of young Kilari who had gathered around him. His shoulder was bandaged, but he was still helping with the cleanup, moving debris and checking systems. "Did it hurt when you got shot?" asked one brave young Quillari male. Dowan considered lying, then decided these kids deserved honesty. "Yeah, it hurt a lot." "Still does, but you didn't stop." "You kept protecting us." "Of course I did. That's what you do when people need help. You don't stop just because something hurts." Another child, a female with bright green skin, asked the question they all wanted to know. "Are all humans like you? Can you all fight and protect people?" Dowan thought about how to answer that. Not all of us are soldiers or warriors, but all of us can be if we need to be. Every human learns some basic self-defense and survival skills. It's part of how we grow up. But most of us never want to use those skills. I was a soldier once, a long time ago. Then I became an engineer because I wanted to build things instead of fight. But you still remember how to fight. Yeah, you don't really forget that. The children looked at him with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. They had been taught that violence was primitive, something that civilized species had evolved past. Now they were learning that sometimes the capacity for violence was what kept civilized species alive. In the ship's main corridor, Minho was leading a team of Vrakan prisoners toward the holding cells when one of them tried something stupid. The raider suddenly broke free from his restraints. They hadn't been tightened enough for his species' strength, and grabbed a piece of metal debris as a weapon. He swung it at the nearest Marine. Yuri saw it coming and ducked, but the debris hit her shoulder hard enough to dent her armor. She went down with a grunt of pain. The Vrakan raised the metal again, this time aiming for her head. Minho was there before the blow could fall. He caught the raider's arm, twisted, and put him on the ground in less than 2 seconds. No wasted motion, no excessive force. Just enough to stop the threat. "Stay down," Minho said calmly. Then he turned to Yuri. "You okay?" Yuri pulled herself up, rotating her shoulder and wincing. "Yeah, bruised, but nothing broken. That's gonna hurt tomorrow, though. Get it checked out." "That's an order." What amazed the watching Quillari was not the fight itself, but what happened after. Minho checked on the Vrakan raider, making sure he hadn't been injured in the takedown. When he found a cut on the raider's arm, he called for medical attention. For the enemy who had just attacked his soldier, Nimra, who had seen the whole thing, approached Minho. "Excuse me, Corporal. I need to understand something. That raider just tried to kill one of your people. Why are you treating his injuries?" Minho looked at her like the question confused him. "Because he's injured. Just because we're enemies doesn't mean I want him to suffer. We fight when we have to, but we're not cruel. But your soldier was hurt." "Yeah, and she's getting treated too. Both things can be true at the same time." Nimra shook her head slowly. These humans made no sense. They were the most capable warriors she had ever seen, but they showed mercy to their enemies. They could kill with brutal efficiency, but chose not to when they had other options. They were terrifying and gentle at the same time. Later, as the Retribution prepared to hand over the Vrakan prisoners to cooperative authorities, Hagen gathered his Marines for a quick debrief. The Retribution cut through space like a knife through water. On the bridge, Commander Hagen studied the distress signal they had picked up 20 minutes ago. It was weak, half-jammed, but clear enough.
A civilian vessel under attack.
Quilari passengers, and according to the manifest he had pulled from the cooperative database, 2 human citizens aboard. How long until we reach them? Hyjin asked. Lieutenant Sora didn't look up from her console. 6 minutes at current speed. Make it 4. The ship accelerated, its engines pushing limits that would have torn apart most civilian vessels. But the Retribution was a military frigate, built by humans for humans, and it could take the stress. In the Marine Bay, Corporal Minho checked his gear one more time. His squad of 20 Marines moved around him with practiced efficiency, loading weapons, testing armor seals, reviewing the ship's layout on their data pads. They had done this before. Not often, but enough to know the rhythm of it. Rules of engagement? Asked Private Yuri, the newest member of the squad. Protect the civilians first. Neutralize threats. Take prisoners if possible. Minho's voice was calm. He had been doing this for 8 years. And remember, most of these hostages are Quilari. They're fragile. Don't knock them over. A few Marines chuckled. Minho didn't smile. It wasn't a joke. The Quilari were built for their low-gravity water world. A human moving too fast could accidentally hurt them just by bumping into them. Back on the gentle current, Griktar dragged the 2 human captives onto the bridge. He wanted to talk to them before the approaching ship arrived. In his experience, civilians were always useful for negotiations. Dawan and Jiwoo stood side by side, their hands bound behind them. Around them, Vrakan raiders kept weapons pointed at their heads. Griktar studied them with interest. The male was larger, with calloused hands and scars that spoke of physical labor. The female was smaller, softer-looking, with kind eyes. Do you know who I am? Griktar asked in the trade language. A pirate, Dawan said flatly. A very successful pirate. And now you are my property. Griktar leaned closer. Tell me about your people. Are they wealthy? Will they pay for your return? Jiwoo spoke before Dawan could answer. Our people will come for us. They always do. Griktar laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. Your people are sending one small ship against my entire fleet. When they arrive, I will show them what happens to those who interfere with my business. Perhaps I will start by killing a few of the Quilari civilians. That usually makes soft species cooperate. He turned to his weapons officer. Prepare to broadcast on all channels. I want the humans to see exactly what they're dealing with. Nimra watched from where she stood near the rear of the bridge, surrounded by other Quilari crew members who had been kept there as additional hostages. She didn't understand why the 2 humans seemed so calm. They were about to witness the execution of their fellow passengers, and yet neither of them looked frightened. The Retribution dropped out of high speed and came to a stop relative to the Frakan fleet. On the main screen, Griktar could see it clearly. It was smaller than his capital ship, but it had the clean, dangerous lines of a military vessel. A transmission came through. Griktar opened the channel. Commander Hyjin's face appeared on the screen. He was younger than Griktar expected, with dark eyes and a neutral expression. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and controlled. This is Commander Hyjin of the Earth vessel Retribution. You are holding civilian passengers and 2 human citizens against their will. Return all hostages unharmed and surrender your vessel. You have 5 minutes to comply. Griktar stared at the screen for a moment, then burst into laughter. His entire bridge crew joined in. 5 minutes to surrender? This human had no idea how the real galaxy worked. I have a better idea, Griktar said. He gestured, and 2 of his raiders dragged a young Quilari female forward. She was crying, begging in her own language. Let me show you what I do to those who make demands. He raised his weapon toward the Quilari's head. Dawan moved without thinking. Even with his hands bound, he threw himself forward, putting his body between the gun and the prisoner. The Vrakan guarding him reacted too slowly. Humans were faster than they expected. Griktar's shot hit Dawan in the shoulder instead. The human grunted, stumbled, but didn't fall. Blood ran down his arm. He stayed on his feet, still between the raider and the Quilari. Interesting, Griktar said. He aimed again, this time at a different Quilari prisoner who was too far away for Dawan to reach. Let's see if you can save them all. The shot killed the prisoner instantly. The Quilari around them screamed. Jiwoo closed her eyes briefly, her jaw tight with rage she couldn't express. On the Retribution, Hyjin watched the execution in silence. His bridge crew waited for his orders, their faces carefully neutral. They all knew what came next. That was unfortunate, Hyjin said softly. His voice had changed. There was something cold in it now, something that made Nimra shiver even through the transmission. You have made a critical error. You have harmed civilians under galactic cooperative protection. Worse, you have taken human citizens and wounded one. There will be no second warning. What are you going to do? Griktar mocked. Your one small ship against my 6? Perhaps you should call for help and wait a few weeks for the cooperative to send their negotiators. Hagen looked directly into the camera. The cooperative doesn't negotiate with pirates. Neither do we. The countdown timer that had been visible on every screen suddenly changed. Instead of 5 minutes, it now showed 30 seconds. Below it, a single word appeared in multiple languages. Run. Griktar stopped laughing. What is this? That's how long you have to evacuate the gentle current and move your ships to minimum safe distance. After that, my Marines will board and secure the vessel. Anyone still aboard who is not a civilian will be considered hostile. 30 seconds? That's impossible. We have over 100 raiders on that ship. Then I suggest you start giving orders. The transmission cut off. For a moment, Griktar just stared at the blank screen. Then he started shouting commands. His raiders were disciplined, but even they couldn't evacuate that quickly. They could get maybe half their people off in 30 seconds. On the bridge of the gentle current, Nimra watched the countdown timer. 20 seconds, 15. The Vrakan raiders around her were arguing, grabbing weapons, running for the exits. Some dragged hostages with them. Others just ran. Jiwoo caught Nimra's eye. Get down, the human said quietly. Cover your head. It's going to get loud. Nimra didn't understand, but something in Jiwoo's tone made her obey. She dropped to the floor, covering her head with her arms. Around her, other Quillari did the same. 10 seconds. 5, 3, 2, 1. The hull of the gentle current erupted in 6 places simultaneously. Not explosions, but precise breaching charges that cut through the metal like it was paper. Magnetic grapples locked onto the edges of the holes, and boarding tubes extended from the retribution, creating sealed passages between the ships. And then the Deathworlders came. Minho was first through the breach in Sector 3. His armor was bulky, dark gray with glowing blue highlights. His helmet completely covered his face. To the Vrakan raiders waiting on the other side, he looked like some kind of monster. 3 raiders opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts that would have killed a Quillari instantly hit Minho's armor and scattered. The kinetic impacts would have knocked most species down. Minho took 2 steps forward and kept coming. Contact, he said calmly into his comm. 6 hostiles, Sector 3 engaging. What happened next lasted less than 30 seconds, but to Nimra, who was watching from around a corner, it felt like hours. The Vrakan raiders were considered some of the fiercest warriors in known space. They were tall, strong, and trained in combat from childhood. The humans went through them like they weren't even there. Minho moved faster than any Quillari could track. He closed the distance to the first raider before the creature could reload, grabbed its weapon and twisted. The sound of breaking bones echoed through the corridor. He dropped that raider and moved to the next one, his armored fists moving with brutal efficiency. Behind him, Yuri and 3 other Marines spread out, covering angles, checking rooms, calling out clear zones in clipped military language. Every movement was purposeful. Every action was controlled. This wasn't rage or bloodlust. This was training, discipline, and experience. Within 2 minutes of the breach, Sector 3 was secure. 15 Vrakan raiders were down. Some unconscious, some too injured to fight, 3 dead. 0 Marines were wounded. Minho opened the comm to all sectors. Sector 3 secure. Civilian casualties? Negative, came the replies from 5 other breach points. Sectors 1 through 6 secure. We have the bridge. On the bridge, Griktar stood frozen in disbelief. The entire ship had fallen in less than 3 minutes. His well-trained raiders had been swept aside like insects. And now, standing in front of him, was the human commander from the transmission. Hagen had not stayed on his ship. He had led the bridge assault personally. You're under arrest, Hagen said simply. Get on your knees. For a moment, Griktar considered fighting. Then he looked at the 6 human Marines behind Hagen, all with weapons ready, all completely calm despite the battle they had just fought. The gentle current drifted through the black void of space like a leaf on a calm pond. Inside the passenger vessel, life moved at its usual peaceful pace. Quillari families gathered in the observation decks, their blue-green skin shimmering under the soft lights as they watched stars blur past. Children pressed their webbed hands against the windows. counting the distant suns while their parents talked quietly about their destination. Captain Veltar sat in his command chair, reviewing the day's logs with tired eyes. He had been doing this job for 40 years. 40 years without a single incident worth reporting. The trade routes between the core worlds were safe, protected by treaties and mutual respect among the civilized species of the Galactic Cooperative. Violence was something that happened in history books, not in real life. Down in the engine room, Doan wiped grease from his hands and checked the power flow readings. The human engineer had been working on the gentle current for 8 months now, taking the contract job to see the galaxy and save money. He kept to himself mostly. The Kilari crew members found humans strange and a bit intimidating, with their solid frames and quick movements. Dowan didn't mind the isolation. He had wanted a quiet life after leaving his previous career behind. In the medical bay, Jiwoo hummed softly while organizing supplies. The human medic was the opposite of Doan in temperament. She smiled easily, learned the Quillari language faster than any human the crew had met, and always had candy in her pockets for the children who came in with scraped knees or upset stomachs. The Quillari loved her. She made them feel safe. Dr. Jiwoo called a young Quillari nurse named Pimla. "Do you think we'll see the Nebula Gardens when we arrive at the station?" Jiwoo grinned. "I hope so. I've heard they're beautiful this time of year." Neither of them noticed the alarms until they started screaming. On the bridge, Captain Velthar stared at his screens in confusion. 6 ships had appeared from nowhere, surrounding the gentle current in a perfect attack formation. His sensors identified them as Vrakan raiders, but that made no sense. The Vrakan were pirates, yes, but they operated in the outer territories, not here in the protected lanes. "Hail them," Velthar ordered, his voice shaking slightly. "Tell them this is a civilian vessel under cooperative protection." The response came in the form of weapons fire. The gentle current's shields flickered and died within seconds. The ship had shields designed to protect against debris and radiation, not military-grade plasma cannons. Alarms filled the air with urgent warnings as the hull was breached in multiple locations. "Send a distress signal," Velthar shouted. "All frequencies." First Officer Nimra's fingers flew across her console, but she could already see the jamming signals blocking most of their communications. She managed to squeeze out one standard distress call on a narrow band before everything went dark. She had no idea if anyone received it. The Frakan were not a species known for their patience or mercy. They were tall, covered in dark scales with eyes that saw in spectrums most species couldn't imagine. They moved through the breached corridors of the gentle current with brutal efficiency, their weapons raised and their intentions clear. Captain Velthar tried to negotiate. He stood in the bridge doorway, his hands raised in the universal gesture of peace, and spoke about laws and treaties and civilized behavior. The Vrakan captain, a massive creature named Griktar, listened for approximately 10 seconds before shooting him in the chest. Nimra watched her captain fall. She had never seen death before. Not real death. Not like this. Her legs nearly gave out, but somehow she stayed standing as the raiders stormed the bridge and began rounding up the crew. Throughout the ship, similar scenes played out. Quillari passengers were pulled from their rooms, pushed into corridors, herded toward the cargo holds like livestock. They didn't fight back. Fighting wasn't in their nature. Their species had evolved past violence millennia ago, or so they believed. Now they learned the price of that evolution. In the engine room, Doan heard the commotion and immediately shut down all non-essential systems. He grabbed a heavy wrench, the closest thing to a weapon available, and moved to a position where he could see the doorway without being seen. His breathing slowed. His muscles relaxed. Old training took over. Training he thought he had left behind years ago. 3 Vrakan raiders entered the engine room, their weapons sweeping the space. They moved poorly, confident in their superiority, not expecting resistance. Tuan waited until they spread out, then struck. The wrench connected with the first raider's knee joint with a wet crack. As the creature fell, Doan caught its weapon and rolled behind a power conduit. The fight lasted less than a minute. When it ended, 3 unconscious Vrakan lay on the floor, and Doan was already moving toward the ventilation system. Knowing he couldn't help anyone if he got captured in a direct confrontation, Jiwoo had no such option. The medical bay was filled with Kilari patients, including children too young to walk. When the raiders burst in, she stepped in front of the youngest ones, her hands raised but her stance firm. "They're children," she said in the trade language. "You don't need them." The lead raider looked at her with something like curiosity. Humans were rare this far into cooperative space. They were also rumored to be from some kind of harsh world, though this small female didn't look particularly dangerous. "Move aside," the raider growled. "No." The raider raised his weapon, but his captain's voice crackled through his communicator before he could fire. "Bring any humans to me. Don't damage them. They might be valuable." Jiwoo found herself being dragged away from her patients, her heart breaking as she heard the Kalari children crying for her. She didn't resist, not yet. She needed to see where they were taking everyone, needed to assess the situation. That's what her training had taught her. In another life. In the cargo hold, Nimra stood among the hundreds of captured Kalari, trying to process what had happened. Around her, families clung to each other. Some were crying. Some were silent with shock. All of them were terrified. Then the doors opened again and the raiders brought in 2 humans. Dawan and Jiwoo were pushed into the crowd, separated from each other by dozens of frightened Quillari. For a moment, their eyes met across the room. Nimra saw something in their faces that confused her. The humans didn't look afraid. They looked calm, almost patient, like they were waiting for something. On the bridge of the lead Vraken ship, Griktar watched his crews finish securing the prize. 847 captives, a valuable ship and cargo worth millions, all without losing a single raider. The Galactic Cooperative was even softer than he had expected. His sensor officer called out suddenly. "Captain, we have an incoming vessel." Griktar barely looked up. "Cooperative security?" "No, sir. The signal is from the Deathworld sector." The bridge went silent. Every Fracken there had heard stories about the Deathworlders, about humans and their impossible planet. But stories were just stories, and this was just one ship. "Let them come," Griktar said. "They'll negotiate like everyone else. They always do." On the gentle current, Jiwoo heard one of the Quillari children whisper, "What's going to happen to us?" She knelt down and squeezed the child's small hand. "It's going to be okay now," she said softly. "My people are here,